His name was whispered in fear, passed quietly among young women trapped in a city that promised them freedom but delivered only chains. Charles Abbey Mwesigwa, known simply as Abbey. To some, he was a recruiter. To others, he was a jailer. Survivors say he was the man who decided where they lived, how they worked, and what punishment awaited if they resisted. But outside those rooms, outside the pain he allegedly controlled, Abbey was almost invisible. No headlines, no police mugshots, just a name. That is, until young women began to die. And suddenly, the shadows of Dubai's glittering towers seemed to point back to him. Charles Abbey Mwesigwa was not a celebrity. He didn't flaunt luxury cars or designer brands on Instagram. Unlike the women he allegedly recruited, he preferred the shadows. But within survivor testimonies, his presence is constant. One woman, speaking anonymously, told BBC reporters, Abbey was the one who arranged everything. The apartments, the clients. He took our passports. If you refused, he would remind you of your debt. You cannot escape. Another survivor described him more bluntly. Abbey was the boss. Everyone feared him. Though details about his personal life remain scarce, the testimonies paint him as both businessman and enforcer. Cold, calculating, always about money. And yet, he did not work alone. He was part of a wider trafficking machine, one that stretched from Kampala to Dubai, luring women with false promises of modeling gigs, hotel jobs, and glamorous lifestyles. Uganda has one of the youngest populations in the world, but opportunities for employment are scarce. For many young women, the chance to work abroad feels like salvation. Recruiters exploit this hope. They promise hotel jobs in Dubai, nanny positions in wealthy homes, influencer deals that sound too good to be true. Agents often operate within communities, making their offers seem safe. Families pool money, thinking their daughters are about to change their lives. But the moment they arrive, the dream collapses. Passports are confiscated. Women are moved into crowded apartments. Then comes the demand. They must repay debts for visas, flights, accommodation. The debt is impossible to clear. The only way out, survivors say, is sex work. Sound WhatsApp pings. Overlay, blurred DM messages reading, "We have a job offer for you. Salary is very good. Dubai is waiting." Survivors claim Abbey was central to this system. He allegedly managed where women were placed, oversaw their debts, and decided their fates. One survivor remembered his words, "You belong to me now. Until you pay, you are mine." It is a pattern that echoes across dozens of testimonies, and it is a pattern that turned deadly. In 2021, tragedy struck. A young Ugandan woman, 23-year-old Kayla Birungi, fell from a Dubai high-rise. Police called it suicide. Her family didn't believe it. A year later, on May 14th, 2022, 24-year-old Mona Kizz, known online as Mona Kizz, also fell to her death from another Dubai tower. The footage of her final moments, filmed by bystanders, spread across social media. Millions watched in horror. For police, the explanation was the same: suicide. For families, for activists, and for thousands online, the deaths looked like something else, the result of a system that trapped women with no way out. Overlay. Mona's Instagram photos dissolve into the blurred video of the building she fell from. The music grows tense, then silent. In both cases, survivors whispered the same name, Charles Abbey. Was it despair that drove these women to their deaths? Or was it the invisible hand of a man and a system determined to silence them? In the weeks before her death, Mona's Instagram told a story few noticed at the time. Her captions turned darker. Phrases about being tired, about betrayal, about carrying secrets too heavy to share. Friends recall phone calls where she sounded trapped, defeated. Then came May 14th. In broad daylight, Mona climbed to a window and fell. Some said she jumped. Others believed she was pushed. What no one could deny is that she was surrounded by a system of coercion that had broken many before her. Her death became a lightning rod. Ugandan social media erupted in outrage. Hashtags demanded justice. But Dubai police maintained their stance: suicide. Case closed. For Mona's family, for Kayla's family, and for many others, that answer was not enough. And behind the grief, behind the unanswered questions, Abbey's shadow loomed larger. By 2022, the stories of Ugandan women dying in Dubai could no longer be ignored. In hushed voices, survivors and activists pointed to the man they believed was pulling strings, Charles Abbey Mwesigwa. For too long, his name lived only in whispers. But then came the BBC's undercover investigation, and suddenly, those whispers became evidence. In Part 2, we follow the journalists who went inside Abbey's alleged network, capturing secret recordings, exposing trafficking routes, and revealing a system larger and darker than anyone imagined. In 2025, the BBC launched an investigation into the unexplained deaths of young Ugandan women in Dubai. The families wanted answers, survivors wanted justice, and activists demanded to know why women like Mona Kizz and Kayla kept turning up dead. At the center of it all, one name, Charles Abbey. For years, Abbey existed only as a whisper in survivor testimonies. But now, hidden cameras, secret recordings, and brave witnesses would bring his world into the light. Investigators from the BBC's Africa Eye team traveled quietly to Uganda and Dubai. They posed as recruiters, job seekers, and intermediaries. Their goal? To trace the network that promised young women glamorous jobs, only to funnel them into exploitation. Hidden cameras rolled in bars, apartments, and quiet backrooms. And soon, the name Abbey appeared again. In one recording, a man alleged to be Charles Abbey discussed the payments needed to move women through the system. He talked about visas, flights, apartments, and he talked about how much each woman could earn. The language was cold, transactional, each young woman reduced to numbers on a balance sheet. For survivors, this was the voice of the man who controlled their lives. Survivors began to speak, some openly, many anonymously. They described the same pattern: promises of hotel jobs or modeling contracts, the sudden confiscation of passports, and then the crushing revelation: they were now in debt bondage. They told me I owed them $3,000 for travel and accommodation. I had no way to pay. They said the only way was to sleep with men. Some women managed to escape. Others disappeared. And for some, like Mona and Kayla, the story ended in death. These voices, long ignored, finally began to form a pattern too clear to dismiss. The BBC team revisited the deaths of Mona Kizz and Kayla. Police reports listed both as suicides, but families insisted their daughters had no history of self-harm, no mental health struggles that could explain it. Instead, they believed the deaths were linked to trafficking, women cornered, trapped, and left with no escape. Both women had confided in friends about being trapped. Both had their passports taken. Both were connected, survivors claimed, to Abbey's network. And yet, officially, their deaths remain closed cases. Abbey, survivors say, was not operating alone. He was one figure in a vast trafficking machine stretching across borders. Recruiters in Uganda scouted young women. Intermediaries in Dubai arranged apartments. Clients, wealthy men, businessmen, travelers fueled demand. It was a web of profit built on broken lives. And the system thrived in silence. Survivors told BBC that police in Dubai rarely intervened, unless there was a death. Even then, cases were quickly labeled as suicides, leaving families powerless. In such a system, Abbey was both a player and a symbol, a name that survivors clung to when trying to explain the faceless power that controlled them. When the BBC published its findings, the reaction in Uganda was explosive. Lawmakers demanded answers. Activists called for tighter controls on recruitment agencies. Uganda's government promised to investigate and shut down illegal recruiters sending women into harm. But critics argued the promises were not enough. One MP said, "We cannot keep burying our daughters while pretending nothing is wrong. This is not migration. This is slavery." Meanwhile, Dubai authorities denied systemic trafficking, insisting their laws were strong and that deaths like Mona's were tragic suicides, not murders. The gulf between the two responses was stark. Families and survivors demanded justice. Officials on both sides offered silence or denial. To this day, no public record confirms that Charles Abbey was arrested or prosecuted. Survivors say he is still out there, operating under new names, shifting between Uganda and Dubai, hidden by the very system he helped run. The deaths of Mona Kizz and Caleb Irungi remain officially ruled as suicides. Families continue to grieve. Survivors continue to whisper warnings. And Abbey's name remains both everywhere and nowhere. This is not just the story of one man. It is the story of a system that thrives on vulnerability, of dreams turned into nightmares, of silence that protects abusers while burying the voices of the abused. The BBC investigation pulled back the curtain, but so many questions remain. How many more women are trapped tonight, scrolling their phones, believing the promises of a recruiter like Abbey? And how many more families will receive the call that their daughter has died in Dubai and that the truth will never be known? If you or someone you know is at risk of trafficking, seek help by reaching out to the law enforcement agencies close to you. This documentary is dedicated to the memory of Mona Kizz and Caleb Irungi. In our next story, we will bring you the full details on the Caleb Irungi case.